for another fun blanket project. I love doing different styles of blankets and different constructions, and today we're going to be talking about doing granny squares. Now for this pattern, we will be using 5 different colors. We're going to be using the color Tide Pool, the color Marina, the color Tranquil, the color Mint, and then this is the Salt and Pepper Speckle Brava. They are all Bravo worsted. They go together really well, but feel free to mix up the colors to whatever you want for your snowflake blanket. You'll also want a stitch marker to keep track of your rounds, a yarn needle to weave in your ends, scissors to cut your yarn, and then of course a size H. This is a 5mm crochet hook. This is the Dots line, also offered by We Crochet, which is my new favorite, and I love working with it. Now, optional, you can get a blocking mat. Let me show you what style of blocking mat I have. Now there are 2 ways you can block these squares. You'll see each one of these represents a square. So we have about a 3.5 by 3.5 inch square, almost 4 by 4, but not quite, which makes a great size of block for our blanket. You can use one of these blocking mats, and then you can get some pins. I love these Knitter's Pride pins that I can just simply one shot do that many, it's almost like using this many pins at once, and I can pin it to a board, lightly spray it, and let it dry, and that is a great way to block. Another fun way to block that's a little bit easier, I find, for granny squares is I'll spray down my granny square, get it just slightly damp, and then I found this, which I will include the link in this description of this video and within the pattern, but this is something I found on Amazon, and this is a wood blocking thing for granny squares in particular. So what the nice thing is about this is it doesn't take up as much space, and you can block more than one granny square at once. So I've got this set to where I want with these pins in here, and I can simply float those over. I'll just spray it and then I'll slide it down, kind of make sure I've got it exactly how I want. It comes with several different metal pins that you can place in different spots. I went ahead and made sure I was placing them correctly by measuring how far apart I wanted these pins to be. Then I can go ahead and do that to another square, and then another square. And this is a great way to almost like do some blocking where they're just stacked instead of like all over the house. And that way, as I'm making them, I can throw them on here and they can all be drying at once, and it works out great. I love this. I think it makes them all perfect how they need to be, and it's really, really quick to do. So that's another way to block it. But I will say blocking is a must to have it look really nice, especially when it comes to having them ready to join. So we're going to make a lot of these, and then we're going to join them together to create this beautiful blanket. So what we're going to do is we're going to get started by learning how to make this solid granny square. To make this simple granny square, we're going to start by making a magic circle. And then we're going to start by doing a chain just to kind of join that circle, and then do a stacked single crochet. It's always smart to go ahead and mark the first stitch in your round with a stitch marker. Next, we will be doing 2 more double crochets inside this ring. Then we will chain 2, and then double crochet 3. And chain 2, and double crochet 3. And then chain 2, and double crochet 3. And now we are going to chain 2, and we're going to pull this circle closed, but not all the way, because we kind of want to leave a little bit of a circle opening for looks. Now I'm going to move my stitch marker and join to the top of the stacked single crochet. For round 2, we are going to go ahead and turn our work, And then we will slip stitch into this first chain stitch. I like to do this by actually going through the chains, so we're grabbing that. And now working into the chain 2 space, we are going to do a stacked single crochet. And then we're going to double crochet one more into that chain 2 space. And now we will double crochet into each of the next 3 stitches. And in each of the chain 2 spaces as we work around, we are going to double crochet 2, chain 2, and double crochet 2. And then work across the next 3 stitches with double crochet. And then once again into this corner space, we are going to double crochet 2, chain 2, and double crochet 2. And then double crochet across the next 3 stitches. And repeat that again on the corner where we do 2 double crochets, chain 2, and 2 double crochets. And then we will double crochet across these last 3 stitches of this round. And then we are going to double crochet 2 into the beginning chain space, chain 2, and now we're going to join to the very first stitch of this round. So we're going to join with a slip stitch. And now we're ready to turn our work again, and we're going to work round 3. And to do round 3, it's very similar. We're going to do a slip stitch into this very first chain stitch. I like to get right into that chain, and then we'll start this round with a stacked single crochet. And then we'll do one more double crochet stitch into that chain space. And now we're going to be double crocheting across these 7 stitches. And now on every single corner space, chain 2 space, we're going to do 2 double crochet stitches, chain 2, and 2 double crochet stitches. We're going to be doing this all the way around where we work across these 7 stitches. And then double crochet 2, chain 2, and double crochet 2 into that chain 2 space. Work across those 7 stitches with double crochets. And then we will double crochet 2, chain 2, and double crochet 2 into that chain space. Work across this last set of 7 stitches with double crochets. Make sure to work in this last one that's kind of hidden by that slip stitch a little bit. And then we're going to work 2 double crochets into the first chain 2 space that we started at the beginning of this round. And then we are going to chain 2. Now you can join with the slip stitch here, or the other option is you can go ahead and cut your yarn and pull it through and grab your tapestry needle. And we're going to create a mock stitch. Now, if you are going to create a mock stitch, I highly recommend undoing the last chain space. That way, we are right here. We've done 1 chain so far. You can go ahead and go through that. Yeah. This way, there you go. Now, if you want to do it this way, I highly recommend you end this with a chain 1. And I'll show you why, because we're going to be creating a mock stitch. So we're going to create our last chain stitch with the way that we join these. So we have 1 chain 1 stitch, and now we're going to do another one by simply going into the top of this stitch, just as if we were going to insert our crochet hook. And now we're going to go back down that last chain stitch right down the center of it. And that created our other chain space stitch. And you can't really tell where we started the round. And then we can go ahead and simply weave in our ends. And that is how we get these beautiful granny squares that we can join together to create a blanket. Next, I want to show you how to create a 2-color granny square. And because this lighter color is hard to see on camera, I'm going to be creating it with these 2 strands. I'm going to count this as the main color, but when making the snowflake one, where the white part will be our main, and then this will be our contrasting color for this tutorial. So to get started with working a 2-color granny square, we're going to create a magic ring or magic circle. And we'll be working our very first round all inside this magic ring. I'm going to start with a little chain, and then I will do a stacked single crochet stitch, and this will be the very first stitch in this round. And we'll want to go ahead and grab a stitch marker and mark that very first stitch. And now I'm going to double crochet 2 into the magic ring, chain 2, and then we're going to double crochet 3. And now we're going to chain 1, and we're going to take our working yarn and we're going to pull it to the front of our work. So we're just going to let it sit on the front, and we're going to grab our contrasting color here, and we're going to pull over to join and pull through that stitch. So this counts as our second chain in the chain 2 space when we're working this. And now we can simply double crochet 3 into this magic ring with our new color. And notice I did catch the tail end there. That just kind of helps tuck this strand as we join these together. And now I'm going to do 2 more double crochets. I can let that tail sit on the back now, but 2 more double crochets. And then I'm going to chain 2 and double crochet 3 all inside this magic ring. And now I'm going to chain 2. We can start to to pull this yarn here for the magic ring to bring that together. Now, if you notice, I do like to leave a little bit of a hole here. I think it's a fun added, little fillet gap there, but if you want to pull it tight, you can. And now we have our first stitch of the round marked. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to slip stitch to join to the very first stitch of this round. And there's our first round. We can see how we have half our color here and half our color here. And now we're going to turn our work for round 2. And then I'm going to, still using our contrasting color, I'm going to work a slip stitch into this very first chain stitch, but I like to work it into that chain stitch. So I'm grabbing one of the strands and then creating a slip stitch. And now we're going to do a stacked single crochet into this chain 2 space. Go ahead and mark that stacked single crochet. And now we're going to double crochet 1. And now we will double crochet into each of the next 3 stitches. On this corner chain 2 space, we're going to do 2 double crochets, chain 2, and 2 double crochets. And now we're going to double crochet into each of these next 3 stitches. Now after double crocheting across these 3 stitches, now we're going to do 2 double crochets into this chain 2 space. And then we're going to chain 1, and then this is where we're going to grab our first color, our main color, and we're going to bring it back up and chain again. And that completes the chain 2, creating it for this corner. But we also want to pull this down a little bit tighter because we don't want too long of a strand here. We can take the yarn we were just using and leave it on the front. And now we're going to take this color, our main color that we started with, and we are going to double crochet 2 into that chain space. And yeah, you do have this strand that kind of hangs out right here, but it's really not that noticeable. It blends in with this first double crochet stitch. And now we're going to double crochet across the next 3 stitches. And then we will do 2 double crochets, chain 2, 2 double crochets, all into the chain 2 space from the round below. Then we will double crochet across the next 3 stitches, and be sure you get that 3rd stitch in there because we slip stitch to join on the round below. It can kind of hide. We want to make sure that we get all 3 stitches across here worked. And then we're going to do 2 double crochets into that chain 2 space at the beginning of the round. And then we can go ahead and slip stitch to join to the very first stitch of this round. Now we're basically, oh, sorry, after we chain 2, sorry, we got to chain 2 and then slip stitch to join to our very first stitch of this round. Now I want to note that this round right here is kind of our repeat round. We'll be doing those stitches again and again, only just working across more stitches when we get to this section. So you can make this any size you want. Let's do round 3. This is where I'm going to turn my work, and I'm going to do a slip stitch into that very first chain of that chain 2 space. And then I'm going to do a stacked single crochet. And now we're going to mark this as the first stitch in the round. Now we're going to do another double crochet into that chain 2 space. And now we are going to double crochet across these 7 stitches. Now the more rounds you do, the more stitches you'll have to double crochet across until you get to your next chain 2 space. And now that we're at the chain 2 space, we will do 2 double crochets, chain 2, and 2 double crochets into that chain 2 space. And now we're going to work across these 7 stitches. And remember, when you get to this last one, don't miss it. Since we slip stitched into it, sometimes it can be a little bit harder to make sure we get there. So count your stitches. And then for this chain 2 space, we are simply going to do 2 double crochets. And now we're going to chain 1, and it's time to change back to our contrasting color that we have hanging out here. So this is where we will do We'll pull it through and that creates that second chain. If you're finished with this yarn, you can go ahead and fasten off if you're only working it to this many rounds like I am, or you can leave it on the front like we had done before, and you can simply keep on going with your new color. Now we will do a double crochet into the chain 2 space, and then another double crochet, and then we will double crochet across these 7 stitches. And then in this chain 2 space, we will do 2 double crochets, chain 2, and 2 double crochet. And then we're going to double crochet across these 7 stitches. And now we will do 2 double crochets in that chain 2 space from the round below. And then this is where it's time to do our chain 2 and then we would join. But I want to show you a different way to do this. We can chain 1 and then go ahead and fasten off and grab your yarn needle. I'm going to pull that through, and then we are going to be doing a mock stitch for the second chain in this space. I just find it's a nice clean join. So this is where the first stitch of this round was. We can go ahead and place our tapestry needle through there as if we were going to work it like a crochet stitch. And then we're going to pull this until it joins a little bit. We're going to go right down the center of our very first chain, right down the center of that stitch. And then we're going to pull it, and notice that makes a mock stitch, which is a really nice join. And then we can go ahead and weave in our ends. So you don't want to pull this too tight because you want it to look like a stitch. And if you pull it too tight, it will diminish the length of it. So now we weave in our ends for all of these. And yes, you do have more ends to weave in when we do these 2 color granny squares, just because we are using 2 colors. So once you weaved in all of your ends, go ahead and block it. As you can see, this does need a little bit of blocking, but once it's blocked, it lays quite nicely and is great for projects. Now that you have made a ton of granny squares and woven in all those ends and blocked those squares out, we are ready to seam these together. If you are making this snowflake blanket, you can lay all these squares out in this order. I hope you have a big area to do so, and you can see how it's going to kind of go to join them together. Or you can simply work from one edge of this and join them in rows as you like. So now that you have your squares lined up to where you want to seam them, we're going to go ahead and take our tapestry needle. The reason why we're doing it this way, we're not slip stitching, is because we have all too often in this pattern, just kind of, this isn't a correct layout, but I just want to show you that if I had a lot of these lines and then they go into other colors, if we slip stitched to join these like I normally do on some of my other blankets, we would have a color of yarn coming in between these that wouldn't really match up. We might have like white or, you know, one of these nice shades of bluish green going through here. So I'm going to be sewing these together, and let me show you how. I'm just simply going to take these 2 squares here. I'm going to use white yarn simply because it's a different contrasting color, so we can see how this goes. So what you want to do is attach your yarn to the back of one of these squares. So I'm just going to do this so I don't have to weave in this end later. I can go ahead and start by weaving it in now and getting it ready. And this is on the back of the blanket, so it's not going to be noticeable and it won't really matter. But I'm going to go ahead and weave this. I have to go back and forth a couple times and kind of catch through my yarn. And then I'm going to bring it up to, I'm going to weave it up to the corner here so that I'm ready to go. So now I'm coming up through one of these corner stitches here. So one of the chain stitches. So I've come up through this chain stitch, And now I have this other square right here, and I want to join these together. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through the center of the chain stitch on this other side and pull through. Then I'm going to come up to the next stitch over on this side, through here, right up the center, and then I'm going to go to the stitch over here, right down that center. And if you want to, if you grab it here, it's a little bit better. I'm going to go down the center of each stitch and then pull through. And now I'm simply going to do the same thing. I'm going to go to the next stitch over here, coming up through the center of that stitch, and then going down to the center of the stitch on this side and pull through. And I'm just going to keep doing that across. And I want to show you what happens. So we can see how our yarn is going. It's just simply weaving through these stitches here. But when I'm ready to, I can pull this tight and notice how it really joins these together nicely. And I'll just keep doing that. Now, if you want to try to use a color of yarn that matches for every single time that you stitch these together, feel free. But if you don't want to take that time, that's fine too, because as we pull these together, you don't really notice the other strand as much, especially on a larger blanket. But if that bugs you, you can use one of the colors of yarn to join these together if you like. If I'm doing the blanket, to be honest, I would probably not use white. I might use one of the other darker shades. But I want you to be able to see how I'm doing this all the way across. And it does a nice join. So now I'm going to go all the way over until I get to those corner chain stitches. And I'm going to do one of the chain stitches on this side to one of the chain stitches on this side. And now I've joined these together. Now I want to show you, kind of pulling that tight, when we have our next color here. So let's say we're going to bring in another color. What I'll want to do is now I'm going to go into the next chain stitch here, and I can go here, or if I'm continuing up this side and I'm going this way, because you can really stitch these together however you want, I could start going down this side and moving a different direction if I wanted till the yarn ran out of here and I needed to join more. But if I'm going to go straight up, what I'll want to do is I'll want to kind of catch a little strand here and come back up that same chain space, because each chain space on these corners, oh, I just undid it. I did not catch a strand there. Each chain space on these corners will be joined to the same adjacent chain space on the other side. So these chain stitches have loops here where you can kind of use that back hump to your advantage to come right back up. So I'm going to go through the chain stitch on this side here. Let me grab another one here. And then through the same chain stitch on this side. I'm going to kind of pull all those together, and that will help create that corner. And I'm going to keep going up. The same thing I did here, we're going to keep doing this, working our way up, pulling that down tight. Now I'm only, if you notice, I'm only joining these edges together. These corners and these edges will be joined when you're working back this way, using this same style of seaming and sewing these granny squares together. Now, because the stitch count is the same on every single granny square, no matter what edge you're working from, these should line up perfectly when it comes to seaming them together. And just like that, that's how we're going to seam all of these granny squares together. It really does a nice job. And this gap right here, as you see, as we seam together here, it will close all those gaps and it'll look a nice join on the corners. So once you have all of your squares joined, and you can follow that picture chart of the color blocks to join them in the right section so that it creates this snowflake look. It's too big for me to put on camera here, so I'm going to show you some images next. But what you can do too is there's a single crochet border I did around all the edges. First, I slip stitched along each edge, and then I single crocheted in each stitch, following the same stitch count along each edge of the granny square. And on the corners, of course, you can add a couple extra stitches so it doesn't curl too much. It's just a simple single crochet border that I did, but it's not necessary. Obviously, it looks great with or without it, but if you want to even it out a little bit, that can help. And then you can always block it again if it's needed. I really hope you enjoyed this beautiful project and you come back for more projects soon by hitting that subscribe button.